You're listening to the Salty Sex Cast with Pamela and Mariah.
Yeah, and what's puberty?
The sex education you wish you had in high school.
Maybe a diagram will help.
Hello, and welcome to the Salty Sex Cast. We are episode 61 with Morgan Ashley.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, I'm Morgan Ashley. I am a model and actress here in Utah and actually a intersex female. This is not super common here in Utah.
No, just that alone is kind of like people are like, what? You act and model? Who does that in Utah?
I know.
And then
exactly.
just add another layer on there.
Yeah, it's not the place to be doing any of that.
Can we start from like the beginning? Like your origin story?
Yeah, okay.
Just a little background. I would love to hear some of that.
Okay, so I guess it would start when I'm in so how intersex works is it happens in like the developmental stage. So like when I was a fetus, so it happens when I was in my mother's stomach. Mm-hmm. And so the very last ultrasound that my parents saw, I was like fully female, like all anatomically female, biologically female. Mm-hmm. And that's what they planned on. That's what they like named me for. That's what they like got ready for. And then when I was born, I've seen like the video and you could see the shock on everyone's faces and they're like, oh, like, cause male anatomy, they're like, so then it's a boy. Mm. So at that point, the doctors knew that there was like a hormonal
anomaly
or defect, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
And at that point, the doctor informed my parents that there was a chance that there would be like other anomalies throughout like my developmental phase. So then I was like, as soon as I can recall, in my head, I was just completely female, presented as female, like, and around when I was 4, they were like, okay, Morgan's still presenting as female, but has like male anatomy. And like, when like you have an intersex child, they usually let the parents choose which way you want to go to like for presentation throughout the rest of that child's life.
Yeah. And
they try to base it on what it's going to be easier to convert to, like when it comes to like genitalia. Okay. And because the genitalia that I had already formed, it was just easier, they thought, socially to like socialize me as male. So they did that, and like apparently now later as an adult, I figured out that runs commonly in my family, and there's someone else who was born with testes and a vaginal canal and a uterus in my family, and they're also intersex female, so it's just something that must have ran on my dad's side.
Oh, interesting.
And they actually had the surgery, like she's a baby right now, and she's already had the surgery, and my family doesn't even really talk about it. Like, but with me, like as I started to go to school, they were like, okay, Morgan still like expresses and is socialized as female. So they took me to a psychologist when I was like 4, and they evaluated me to see if they made the right decision because of the anatomy. Oh. And after the evaluation, they were like, yeah, Morgan is female, like mentally, but it was the 90s. So they were just like, try to encourage Morgan to do things that are like more male typical. So you could like help them socialize as the gender that we've picked. And the doctor that I had at that time who delivered me was like kind of in on it. So when I got older and started developing female, because in 8th grade I started growing breasts, and I was like, is this normal that I'm like getting breasts and that I feel female, but everyone's saying I'm a guy? And I had a breastbone and started getting breasts in like 8th grade, and the doctor was like, yeah, that's normal for males, like that's typical, because he like is who delivered me, and my parents like knew that they needed to like socialize me as like male because male anatomy, and there wasn't
so
really
you were never told.
No, they didn't tell me until...
What the shit?
Holy shit, really?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, they didn't tell me until...
So that's when you were like, hey, I'm getting breast tissue, I'm growing breasts, and they're like, oh, it's normal, but really it was part of that whole like anomaly,
and when I was
and everything.
Really little, I was just like, I'm female, and I would tell my friends that, and I remember them being like, oh, what? But you're like... Because my parents would bring you over and be like, this is our son, Morgan. So it was like... And then I would see the kids and be like, yeah, I'm a girl. And they're like, wait, your parents said this and blah, blah, blah. And I would always like make up some kind of story for like why my parents said that. And be like, no, but I'm not. Like, I'm like this. And I was just like adamant about it. And my parents and all my family know that. And like, especially now, like, because another thing, like, because I was identified or like socialized as male for my whole life, I thought that that's just what I had to do. So I would get really bad anxiety when I would think about like the fact that I didn't get to express like, because all of my friends, because I was a cheerleader, I was very popular. Like I would like dated guys and everything. So it's like that whole time, like all of my friends were female, like, and getting to go to prom and do all of these normal things. And I'm like, I don't get to get seen the way that you guys do. And I always was adamant about not actually transitioning until I got to actually like have the full experience, like to actually be able to be like seen that way and like
accepted.
To live that way and accepted. Yeah. So I was like, I didn't think it was an option.
So at that point when you were cheerleading and you said you were dating males, so at that point you were
presenting as
were you
male.
presenting?
Yeah, and people
as
would
male?
always be like, you're very androgynous. And even then, before I was like saying that I was female, like your average like podunk fucking your average
fucking's okay. We say fucking.
totally
all the time.
say
fucking? Okay.
yes.
So your average like redneck would see me at a gas station presenting as like male, and they would be like, I remember one time my mom had a confrontation and there's this redneck guy and he's like, is that like you're a woman? And she was like, that's my son. And he was like, but that's a woman. Like, so even then before transitioning, people were always like, what are you? Like very androgynous. And every time I would hook up with a guy, because I was always very high ultra feminine, and I would hook up with like guys on the football team or wrestlers or whatever, and they would always be like, I'm not gay, so this is really confusing. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfect because I'm not a boy.
So it just kind of helped you feel like you're
validated,
seeing me
like,
even like
but without any of the exterior things getting to like validate who you are and how people see you, because like that's how much of it is like socialized presentation.
Oh, completely. Yeah. So what was the turning point for you to finally say like, nope, done with that male Morgan? Or like what was that transition like for you?
As I started to get older and have like more adult relationships, and you see the dynamic in a relationship of like being the girl in the relationship versus the guy, and the expectation that girls have for their boyfriend versus like the dynamic. And I was like, I know that I'm not fitting into this like, I've always felt very like atypical when it came to like orientation of being like, I'm like very binary when it comes to feeling like in a relationship that I'm the feminine counterpart. Like, so then wanting to express that in dating as I got more adult, I was like, would sometimes feel compared to other cis females and be like, you're not feel like my significant other wasn't recognizing me in the way that he recognized them. And then I was like, okay, so then I'm going to transition. So then when I went to actually like transition, that's when they called me and were like, how long ago did you start transitioning? And I was like, I haven't yet. The doctor, my gynecologist, was like, how long ago? Because we checked your hormones and tested your blood and all of these things. And
so they thought you had been taking hormones.
Yeah, they were like,
everything.
you already have female hormone levels. And that's when I like figured out that I was intersex, because prior to transitioning, my hormone levels were already both female and like had female hormone levels, but then I still had like male genitalia, which in intersex, it's like when biologically the sex that you are, your anatomy isn't traditional of that. And there's like thousands of variations.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And mutations.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't find out till that point. And then when I transitioned, it just like all kind of happened and took off, and like, and now like getting to like have the experience of face value being seen as a woman.
A passing, yes.
Exactly, passing. And that's like such a big word. And like, I never wanted to transition if I wasn't going to pass. And I was like, I never want to tell my family that I'm a woman if they're not going to see me as like their beautiful daughter, their beautiful granddaughter. And luckily, like I am someone who's fortunate that like even my strict religious, like super religious, like grandmother and family and like all the matriarch in my family actually does recognize me as female and is like, yeah, we've always like known that. And now like being able to see it physically, like, and socially, where they're like, it would be silly for anyone to identify me as anything else.
Yes.
That it's like, it kind of just like happens without me having to make a big social statement. And that's why I wanted to come on here and actually be like, make myself uncomfortable, because I feel like I do really get to pass and go very covert.
Yeah, but you still have seen the other side and been part of like that other side of the world, or the
fear.
Yeah, that's huge. And so you got to kind of be that in between for somebody who's like, hey, tell me your story, tell me a little bit about it. I need support, and be that voice for people who don't get that support, because you have family who's accepting right now.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to have that.
So
Both of my parents were very like I started transitioning, and then my dad found out after, because he like was aware. He found out that I was taking shots, and he was like, "What are you taking shots for?" And he was like, "Are you transitioning?" And I like told him, and he was like, "Okay, are you gonna get surgery?" And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "I feel like you should. Like I've always thought you should have. We should have when you were little." And like hearing that was like very validating, because I was always afraid that he was gonna be like, "Oh, like this is mutilation. Like any like changing of your body like is gonna be."
But you said as you started transition, you already had a gynecologist.
Yeah, so well, everyone who transitions goes to a gynecologist, because that's who like sees your like hormone levels. I think.
Oh, okay.
I don't actually. That's another thing. I don't actually know from female to male, but I think that they also go to a gynecologist, because that's who handles that whole area of your body and like what regulates your hormones.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I bet.
I believe, because she's like a gynecologist and OBGYN, and then she also like is a doctor for HRT, like if you're going to go into transitioning.
Okay. So I'm going to totally come off ignorant a little bit right now and ask you, are those boobs real?
They are real.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they're real.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I had to pay for mine. Damn it.
Did you?
I totally did. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they're real. They're
Money
real.
well spent, though.
Well, because because you were saying like as you slowly started, you were growing breasts.
Yeah, when I started
so-
transitioning, like started getting on HRT, I was like a 32C going into it, like at least like a year in, I think. And then
How's your back?
they hurt, like it hurt. It hurts. Like, yeah. And then since I've been on hormones, they fluctuate. Like the more I eat, like
like
I'm
every
like a
women's
Victoria's Secret double D. But then like in designer sizes, I'm like a double D. But then in like any other brand other than like designer or Victoria's Secret, I'm like a D.
Yeah. Well, because
I'm
they're
like-
trying to sell you a bigger ego for
and
sure.
usually they say like in transitioning, they're like, don't expect more than a C cup. So I was always like, please God, like let me get boobs. And my moms are like Fs.
Oh
Like,
shit. Okay.
and
So
they say in transitioning, like sometimes like it goes off of your genetics, so you get what you would have got if you would have been born that gender already, hypothetically. But I'm like, how would they really know that?
true. Yeah.
But-
unless they look at like, try to compare it to like siblings or something,
like
I guess.
twins
I
and
don't
stuff,
know.
because there's a lot of twins that
Yeah,
I've seen. I was like on Snapchat the other day and saw this twin, and one of them transitioned into female, and the other one's like.
My mom
They're
and
so hot,
aunt
both
are
of them.
identical twins, and my aunt is far more masculine than my mom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I wonder
Yeah.
if it's just like the dispersal of, because it's all genetic and passing.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's a roll of the fucking
even
dice.
if you have you ever like the ancestry tests, like where you
Yes,
can find
I
out
have.
where you get like, so you and your brother wouldn't have the same percentages
no, not at
because
all.
of how it passes on. So like
Yeah.
if you're like half black, half white, like you could be like 50% white, and your sister could be like
Oh, I've seen
80%
beautiful
white.
like twins that one like if dad's black and mom's white, you
Yeah.
have one twin that's black and one that's
Have
white.
you seen that?
Yes, I
we
think
were
it's
just talking about that
incredible.
yesterday. Yeah.
So it just shows you all the crazy and like I said, it's just that roll of the dice.
Yeah, the
it's,
different
there's
things that
so
can
many
happen.
so many things that can happen. So tell me a little bit more about being accepting of just those who are wanting to follow their path. And like you said, you kind of had growing up, they forced you, or I shouldn't say forced you, but your parents chose that you were going to be a boy, and you kind of pushed against that because that wasn't who you felt like you were. And, let's just talk about being more accepting of all of that. And
Well, I think that's why it's like really important for the people that's why I'm really grateful for, as we were saying earlier, there's a lot of people who transition and don't really get the whole experience because society isn't like allowing them to identify by like actually being able to suspend disbelief to be like, accept people for who they say they are and not just what they see. Mm-hmm. And I think that every way that we could normalize accepting each other for who we are. Sorry, wait, I'm like distracted of. Can you ask that question again for me?
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
okay.
it was like a.
How can we be more accepting? Like what would be helpful? What is something everyone can do today that can just, make others feel more accepted when they don't fit that specific mold we've been told pink or blue kind of thing?
Oh yeah, like, because I was going to say, like, on the other side, the people who aren't accepting it, the best thing for them to do would be education, but they're not going to do that because they don't care. So it's like, how are you going to make someone care? So then I would say the best thing to do is not worried about whether they care or not, and to just do what you actually feel is true, because the more you as an individual just do what you want to do and are who you want to do, or you are who you want to be, you normalize that thing. And for the people who like transition and don't actually get seen as that gender, they do make it easier for every trans person that comes after them. And when I first transitioned, like, I was having a really hard time about being like, I don't want to be on the forefront of this like war on
Oh, you
gender.
didn't want to be the face, the person
and, like,
that had to explain to everyone.
Exactly. Like, I was like, I just want a normal girl's experience. Like, I don't want to have to be seen as trans and be an advocate. Like, how am I ever supposed to be okay with being trans? Because in the beginning, I like really didn't like it. Like, I was like, I want to be normal. Like, how am I ever going to be okay with not being normal? And how I got there was being grateful for getting to make it easier for girls after me to be normal. And like, I'm very grateful to the girls who have done it before me, like, even when it's not so easy for them as to like pass and like look that way. But it's like, anything you do to express yourself is helping the people who come after you more easily express themselves, and that's what normalizes it. Because we're not going to be able to get people to care, but we could have people in close quarters with us, like, experiencing us. And that's really the most we could do.
You don't
is
have
be
to hide.
experienced.
You don't have to be ashamed and hiding and feeling like people aren't going, and even if they don't accept you, I'm hearing is what you're saying is, even if they don't accept you, you're still going to be you.
Yeah, and you're still impacting the people who are accepted. They're getting accepted because of you, like, widening.
Being aware.
Yeah,
Just
exactly. Like,
knowing.
something like Lady Gaga said like forever ago about how she likes to expand the mold, because then she feels like people have permission to be more weird, because like, if she makes the standard wider, like, you could feel like you still fit into it even if you are different.
Yeah.
And like, that's how we educate people, is just through doing it and not being afraid to, and even when it's scary. And I feel like it's easy for me to say because of passing, and that's why I try to make myself uncomfortable and do things that are like scary and push that boundary, like with working at the strip club. Like,
yes, I was going to go into that. I'm like,
what?
What is scary that you've done, Morgan?
Yeah, like that. So actually, like, that happened really early into transitioning. Like, after I transitioned, like, I remember even before then, every time I would like put on makeup and put on a wig, I was like, you could be a stripper. Like, I know you could, like, just with eyeliner.
Those gorgeous
like,
long legs.
Yeah, I was like, you could do it. Like,
Yeah.
and that's how I've always seen like how small the like boundary of what people consider, like, so much of attraction is like experience and perception and how you perceive a person. And it's always been easy for me to be perceived as a woman, even before I was even on hormones. So I'm like, so much of like what people find so important and base their lives around is all perception and like triggering that with appearance, and after
Pushing that mold just a little bit
pushing the
wider.
mold. And like, after I transitioned, like, I feel like I really did want that, because you grow up being told that you're one gender and you really want to express that you're another. I've fought really hard to get validated in that and to be like recognized by your peers and by the people who you're interacting with. And like eventually socialization wasn't enough, and I wanted to be like sexually recognized as a female.
Ooh.
And to be seen as like a desirable
wanted,
female. Yeah,
yes.
like, and to me, like, stripping was just the market of that. Like,
well, you're on stage. It's a power move for one.
You're on display,
yeah.
like, and
oh,
like
fuck yeah.
the female form, like,
gorgeous.
you're literally manipulating people into paying you based on your form and your rhythm and just the fact your sex appeal. And growing up as someone who was seen as a boy, like, to be able to go in and be like, no, all of you would see me as what I tell you to see me, like, and all of you will see me as
that fucking power that
to
you have to
define
be able to
beauty.
do that.
It
That's
was scary.
beautiful.
And like they didn't know going into it that I was trans. Like, so when I auditioned for that job and they offered, like, she offered it to me, and then after I told her that I was trans, and she was like, okay, well, what does your birth certificate say, and what does your ID say? And I said that it said female, and went and hurried and like got it changed so I could work there.
Because it had it.
And yeah, I hadn't, and I hadn't had surgery yet. And
So it
this
would
is,
have
like,
mattered?
Yes, and that's the thing. It would have mattered to them. Like
Like they couldn't write checks to a male?
well, they said that like
Or, I mean, I don't-
Because
they're
of-
licensed to like have the strip club. Like it's like a sex license. So technically,
Oh.
I was a sex worker. Like allowed to do sex work from the state as long as you do it under the confines of like
The
this
3-foot rule,
yeah,
all
locations.
of things. Yeah.
like
Fucking
they
Utah.
have a license.
Yeah.
Like it's like liquor laws essentially.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a license for one thing, and I got that. But then even after, like, because to me, like, there are girls who like were born female, because we were just talking about intersex. There's girls who are born female that have penises. So I'm like, that really doesn't matter. So I got the ID thing, but then after, like, I was like, it's never going to be a problem if I've had the bottom surgery or not, because there's like ways to mask that.
Oh, yeah.
And I worked at a club where you didn't have to get fully nude. So I was like, I'll be able to cover that.
Yeah.
And after working there for a bit, like, she was like adamant about not ever disclosing that I'm trans or allowing anyone to find out, which to me, and she, after I told her that I was trans, she was like, you're the first like trans or intersex person to like work here in history. Like,
In Utah.
yeah, like ever. And that's a huge deal. And then rather than advertise that and promote it, she was like,
yeah, I feel like that would
So
have been
now-
something to advertise and
yeah, and
promote.
then, like, that's
Let's
rare, and
continue
people
hiding
even
who
not
you
knowing-
are that
Exactly.
you've hid for how long?
But
kind of,
even
it's a dick move.
even
Oh, yeah.
modeling, to be
Yeah.
honest, that like in
Oh,
Utah,
modeling is fucking
modeling was like
brutal.
that too. When it's the same circumstance when I got signed as a model. I didn't tell them I was trans. She offered me the contract, and then I brought it up, and she was like, okay, well, because we're selling you as a female to like agents and casting directors, you have to show up and like not let them know that, because that's
You
not what
can't
they're asking
disclose
for. So if
anything.
they seem like you're being like artificial, which it really isn't artificial, and she was like, Utah's not a state where, because there's states where you being trans is like an asset, and they're going to be like, we want a trans girl that still looks like fits like the standard of beauty.
Ugh. Yeah, well, we can talk about beauty
But
standards in a minute.
exactly, with modeling, it's like it's so funny. So it's like a lot of me being recognized as being female, like you take this journey to live up to the beauty standard for what female is and what it means to be feminine.
While also redefining it
Exactly.
just enough that we're slowly kind of moving that compass. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
But sometimes I'm like redefining it by living into it, and I'm like, how much of me is constructed off of like what other people find beautiful and what other people find sexual, and like what things do we do to like, because even like having to hide part of yourself to appear a certain way to be more appealing, like it just kind of shows you we're still not like there yet. Like they're like, you're beautiful and you can totally feel this type as long as they don't know this thing. And it's like, it should show you that like that thing doesn't matter because they want me. Because you want me as being a beautiful woman, why does it matter if I'm trans to where I should have to hide it? Mm-hmm. And like, it was really important to me in the beginning to go into this field of like acting and modeling to be validated as like you're the female standard.
oh, okay.
And it's like they recognize that while stripping you of what it took you to get there.
oh.
And like act like, because I'm like, even I could still live up to your beauty standard that you're setting being trans. So why do I have to hide that I'm trans? And like, eventually at the strip club, that became a problem. Like,
I wouldn't think it would matter if you were modeling. They're looking for a specific type of model.
Brady, you're ahead of the curve.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's my bad.
We love you. But yeah, but
I just can't figure it out because
Utah standards.
Yeah.
Utah.
I guess. Yeah.
Jesus.
the first time that we met, I saw you from across. I can't even remember the name of the bar we were at, but I saw you from across the bar, and
Brady
I was like,
has a huge crush on you.
I have a huge crush on you.
Sorry, right as you're drinking
And
water,
I was
we're
like,
gonna.
she is gorgeous. And like, if I was responsible for modeling agency, and I was, whether it's bras or panties or motorcycles, if I was looking for you to wear my bras and panties or sit on my motorcycle, and you showed up and you're like, hey, I happen to have a different letter on my birth certificate than I'm presenting in real life, I wouldn't give a shit.
Exactly. And that's how
Bro,
I
I'm
feel
just
about
trying to
it
sell
too,
bras,
'cause I'm
panties,
like,
and motorcycles.
that part's not even going to show. But at the strip club, eventually, and this is so embarrassing, guys, but eventually, the girl who hired me came up to me after one of the times that I was performing and was like, have you really had surgery? Because, like, I could see it. And I'm like, guys, it was in my large intestine. There's no way anyone could see it. Like, I was, like, so covered. But I'm like, you know that I'm trans because I disclosed it to you and I told you. So you're insecure about getting, like, found out that, like, you hired a trans girl. So
And you're
basically, like,
hyper-focusing
being, like,
on me.
Exactly. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there were so many guys there in the club the night that she said that, and none of them had a problem with it. Like, I was like doing well that night. Like, I'm like, so I know that that's incorrect. But I was so on the spot that I was like, whatever, like, what are you going to argue with them and be like, and she was like, you could come, she was crying, like, bawling.
So
being
she
like,
was probably
yeah,
uncomfortable
she was like, this is so
herself.
uncomfortable having to tell you this. And she was like, as soon as you get surgery, you could come back. And after that, I was like, really needed, it's like, you did this for validation, and now there's this huge hole in that plan because you just super got, like, rejected for this thing that, like, you're trying so hard to overcompensate for by even doing this job in the first place. And after that, it took me to, like, being in adult films and doing, like, camming and things where, like, that could actually be seen as an asset, where, like, having that makes you more unique. But come to find out later, like, that she still will, like, talk about it to people that I worked there and, like, brag about me working there. She's, like, told people my name and stuff and been, like, there's, like, this guy that's, like, a known, like, chaser, like, and a chaser, like, for everyone who doesn't know, is someone who, like, seeks out someone for being trans or, like, not interested in who you are as a person, but more fetishizing the fact that you're trans.
Oh.
And she works with him
So
at
it's
a
like
bar.
a unicorn hunter, but for
Exactly.
trans community.
Exactly.
Ew. Okay.
And she works with him at a bar, finds out that he's like that, and was like, oh, we hired a trans girl at Trails, and, like,
wow.
yeah, like, told, and, like, oh, I wonder if you know her, and, like, told her my name, or told him my name. And he was like, yeah, I actually do know her. And ended up being like, you worked at the strip club, and, like, it's just funny that you use it to, like, brag about later, but that's, like, what you literally fired me over. And it's like, it just shows me, like, that we're still not there yet. Like, it's like, yeah, you could still work and be successful as a female model here if you can pass as being cis. And I'm lucky enough that I can.
Yeah, you can.
But it's like, it doesn't make it any more difficult, or it doesn't make me any more secure about, because it's like, at the end of the day, I still am trans. Like, whether I pass or not and I'm seen that way, it's like, there's still that, like, piece, like, or that part of, like, kind of like rejection of feeling like a part of you is only accepted if you could pretend to be something else.
Don't advertise that, please. That makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I'm like,
when it's not your work to be done.
Which again is weird too, because I think it would attract an interesting.
Exactly,
it would attract clientele. Yeah, it's very niche.
That's what I think.
Yeah. For the record, not a chaser. I thought you were cute before I knew.
Thank you.
And then somebody told me, and I was like, ah, cool.
Yeah, that
doesn't really matter. She's still hot. Like, shut up.
I feel like, and luckily that's typically my experience, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't usually have to feel very on the spot about being trans. I usually don't get
Really, it's just your
misgendered.
fucking height. I was like,
I know,
Jesus
I'm
Christ,
so
I feel like a
tall.
midget.
That's the thing that people say the most. They're like, oh my
Oh,
God.
you're beautiful.
didn't
I think
notice
that
your
was
height.
the
A giant
first.
woman, and I'm like-
Oh no, I think that was the first thing I said to you. I was like, your legs are gorgeous because you were
so
wearing a
tall.
cute little short dress.
Oh, sure. Sure.
I was
Yeah,
like,
I didn't,
all
I didn't
you
notice your
see
height. I noticed your legs, though.
is those beautiful mile-long legs. Yes.
Really long legs.
Yeah. But okay, so being supportive and feeling like you get to still, you don't want to fit that mold. You want to, like you were saying, you are lucky that you pass. But where are the people who maybe don't pass, but who still want to be accepted and seen as that? What's important to share about?
It's like really hard for me to speak for them, but something I would say is like, I don't think there's any one line you have to cross
Yeah.
to be seen as, okay, now you're a female. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think you should have to look a certain way or talk a certain way or make, like, there shouldn't be like a standard that you have to live up to be identified as female and to be seen as female. Like, we should see people as who they are because they tell us who they are. Like,
That's why I love that
person is the authority on who they are.
Exactly. Thank you so much. That's why I love that we are getting a little bit closer to normalizing, like, what are your pronouns? So if you don't know or if you're unsure, fuck, my email signature says my pronouns. Like, just as that one step closer, pushing that mold out just a little bit further is asking for pronouns and being prepared that sometimes you're going to hear a pronoun or something that's not, oh, I wasn't expecting they, them. Okay. Like, that's something that's new for me. Like, let me get on board with that. And
And I think being also
push
aware
that mold
of,
of myself. Mm-hmm.
your entitlement to even like feel like you need to know their pronoun or like, because so many times I feel like, me and my friend were talking about that earlier. Like, she's like, I feel like there's things that people will ask trans people that they wouldn't ask a cisgendered girl. Like, they'll be like, oh, were you like born female or whatever to a trans person? And it's like, you wouldn't ask a cis girl about her genitalia. You wouldn't be like,
No.
what's it look like when there's like a myriad of
Have you had surgery?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think stepping back that sense of entitlement of like, why do I deserve to know what that person is? And like,
Yeah. And there's a line of like respect or like, hey, I want to know your pronouns so I can make sure that I'm labeling you.
Identifying you
Yes.
correctly, yeah.
Yeah. And respecting who you want to be. And then there's definitely the line where you cross where it's, you don't need to know about my genitalia. You don't
Yeah,
need
and
to
that's- at
know
the end of the
what
day,
I
that's what
was
you're
when I
asking
came out
about.
of the womb. Yeah.
exactly.
I did go through a period where I was learning about it, where I was trying to figure out how to ask the right questions depending on the conversation, right?
Oh, let's
So
ask. I'm so curious.
Well, and I struggled with like, because someone would say, and it seems dumb to have this confusion now, but somebody would say like, oh, I'm a male transgendered. And I was like,
to me, that means that you were born female and you were like became
Right.
a male because they're a male.
yeah, and
they're
that's
transgender.
and that's what I know now. But I was like, are you a male who's transitioning, or are you transitioning to being a male? Like, I didn't know at the time, and I was just like, if someone said that to me, I would just like leave it at that, and then just sort of like, well, now I don't know, but because I felt like it wasn't my place to ask. So I
feel
did.
like
I
if
did
it's
struggle
your
with that.
question to have, then it's your place to ask, and you should ask it. But then it's sometimes like, don't make someone else responsible for educating yourself. So if you have the question, like, teach yourself. Like,
Yeah. Sure.
there's resources, guys. Like, you could get on YouTube. Like,
Google and
ContraPoints is amazing.
YouTube was
Like,
super helpful.
yeah, it's like if you are curious about something, because I feel like so much of the curiosity comes from porn, and that's where guys seek education. And sorry, I say guys, but that's the main thing that pursues me.
Not
So that's what I have the
necessarily
most
wrong.
experience with.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's nothing wrong in educating yourself with porn, but it's like, that's not always the most
But porn is
trans-positive
scripted.
thing.
Yeah. Well,
So it's like, don't be
it's-
afraid to educate yourself. Like,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to, like, if you have a question about something you're attracted to, like, look into it. Like, ask someone a question that's not gonna ask the internet a question because it's not gonna get offended. You're not personally insulting someone or triggering them by like,
I was so terrified to hurt somebody's feelings because I don't necessarily understand how difficult it is, but I can imagine how difficult it is. And then to be questioned all the time must be frustrating. So I would just sort of like,
there's a time and a place.
just not going to ask.
Like,
I'll go home and Google later.
Like
And
podcasts.
it's
So
like-
let's answer all those hard questions.
Yeah, and like if you,
So that's
if
why I
someone
said
has a
I'm going to come
question,
off sounding ignorant, but now
that's
I just
good.
want to
No,
know.
yeah, like please ask questions because I'm like, there's places where people who are open about it are willing to be asked questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then there's places where people are trying to be covert and not, who have social anxiety and they're not trying to fill on the spot. So it's like,
Sure.
be aware of where you're educating yourself and like, it's
Mm-hmm.
fine to have the interest, but it's like, educate yourself.
And it sounds like it's not okay to be a chaser. Like, don't
I don't
fetishize.
think that's true.
Oh, it is okay to be a chaser?
I think that there's like, I
Not to the point
personally
of
wouldn't date a chaser.
objectification?
Like
There's a balance, right? Yeah.
Because I think it's the same thing as like I was saying the other day. Like there's guys who are like I'm a butt guy. There's guys who are like I'm a boob guy.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
guys who are like I'm a dick guy. It's like it doesn't matter
they're
what
still-
you like on a girl. Like you're allowed to have a preference
Yeah.
and it's preference to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is it a chaser to like girls that have dicks? Like, are you an ass chaser if you like girls who like asses? It's like at the end of the day, you should still be seeing the person
As the
for like
full
as the person. Yeah,
Yes,
and it's like
that's where it's
I'm
the
offended
line.
personally. Like if a guy who's like into me for being trans would date a trans girl that I don't find attractive, that's gonna insult me the same way if I'm like, this guy likes double D's. He's dating me because I have double D's, but he'd also date like that girl over there who's like a 2 and she has double D's. It's like you never want to feel like resorted down to
Just the one attribute.
exactly like you want to be seen as a whole entire package. But I never have a problem with someone appreciating a part of my body, like
Especially parts of your body that society or other people have told you that isn't.
exactly like
accepted.
height even,
Yeah.
or having curly hair, being ethnic. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I fit into all of those categories, and a lot of society is like those things aren't great. So of course when a guy
So in
fetishizes
the
those
modeling,
things in that
yeah.
way,
Yeah, that's
I appreciate
probably
it,
what
but I'm like,
yeah.
I still wouldn't want them to be like, oh, I would date a girl who just because she's trans, like, because it takes away
That's
from
the only thing you are. Yeah,
it's like reducing you down to that.
for sure.
I'm like, there's so much more.
There's so much more that goes into everybody. So beauty standards, because I'm sure, because you do hit quite a few of those standards for modeling in Utah. You're tall, your skin color, you know, it's that unique look that probably a lot of people are looking for here. So those are some good things about it. But then there's probably some things that you're not hitting or probably struggling with. So talk about beauty standards and for yourself, that journey a little bit.
I feel like I guess the biggest standard that I obsess about is the standard to be feminine. Like, and someone that like my best friend is actually a cis female, and like a lot of the things that I'm insecure about, she'll talk about too. And she was like, it's not about being that you're trans. Like that's just like something that like all girls have to do. Like your shoulders being too big, like your frame being too big. Like it's those are things that your voice, like those are things that I feel like all
Facial hair?
like,
that one's for me
all
for
girls,
sure.
like we all have testosterone.
Oh, yeah.
And
There's always things you're
estrogen.
wanting to.
yeah, and it's like they like make it seem like okay, there's this one guy that I like hooked up with, and he was like shocked that I had body hair, and he was like, girls like don't have body hair, like is that like a trans thing? And I was like, you know that girls just like shave their body hair, right? Like and he was like, no, they're hairless, and he was like, that's like a guy thing, and I was like, no, you've just like, guys don't have that societal pressure of being like, you have to shave to be. So it's like you see a lot more bald vaginas than you're gonna see bald dicks, like, and but I was thrown like when you said that, like
I
he
would
was
be
like, that's so
too.
masculine, and I was
Oh
like,
my God.
that's literally everyone. They just shave it, like, is the difference, like.
Yeah.
And it just shows you like the standard that they enforce on girls, but it's like guys have that standard, like beauty standards that no one expects me to lift anything ever. Like, no, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah, until I get really drunk and I'm like, I bet I can squat you. Yeah, like hop on my back, I'll squat you because I want to prove that
She's
I.
not telling a joke. That's like a legit thing. She does when she gets drunk.
I do
it
that
all
I'm
the time.
I'm the man in this relationship.
Right.
But sometimes I'm just like, I'm the fucking
But
bro.
because I wanted
Like,
to push that mold out a little bit more. I wanted to prove just a little bit that I'm not what you want and expect from me. I'm still who I am, and I still got to be that.
yeah. And so often I feel like that's why I love Lucille Ball, for instance. She's like a female comedian that shows that girls don't have to live into one standard. And
How boring would that be?
I know,
Jesus
and
Christ.
how often is that so I feel like for me personally, so much of that was shaped on what people find attractive in the type of people who I was trying to attract, which unfortunately everyone is men.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of my beauty standard was shaped off of what men find attractive, and that's very limiting and not always very creative. And
Guys are pretty boring.
I think that we all create our own standard through if you are a woman, whatever you're doing, you're helping create the standard. And we were saying earlier, that's why it's important to be who you are, because you are shaping the standard. You are educating by just existence. And I feel so many people think that they're so insignificant that they don't have an impact just by existing, but you really do. So you not being yourself has just as big of an impact as if you were to be yourself, and which one's gonna shift things more positively.
So what drop of the bucket are you putting your, are you going to go more with the grain? Are you going to still be yourself? Even though it's a tiny little piece that someone has a choice to be, they get to be part of that very gradual movement.
Yeah, the
That's
impact.
really cool.
So.
That's really cool. What part of your story are you most proud of?
I think getting to be who I wanted to be. Getting to
Love it.
not being envious of other people and being oh, I want to be them, but getting to be envious of my current self. And versus I feel younger me wishes that they got to be this me the whole time.
Oh, that's
And it's
beautiful.
that's definitely what I'm most thankful for. And the experience that I get to have of it being validated. But the only way you're ever going to get that is through doing it. And it's I'm very lucky that I get to be myself and find that beautiful. To be myself and be I'm beautiful. And I'm so thankful.
For anyone to say
for
that.
anyone
to be able to look in the mirror and feel that, or, photos, whatever, or just stand there and say, I am beautiful. You know what small percentage of the population can say that when they look in the mirror? Body image and being accepting of yourself is so hard. And you've got to pave that way for yourself.
Yeah.
And do that. That's
And
fantastic.
It's rewarding for sure.
Yeah.
It's work though.
Well, yeah.
It's definitely work. And I say all the time, I feel someone who you would think that looking like this, I'd be the epitome of security, but I'm not. I'm so
You conceited little bitch.
I feel
I'm just kidding.
you're so
You're
I
fine.
feel
Teasing.
the prettier people tell you are, the more insecure, because you start to value that, and you lose track of
What is important?
how important that is.
Yeah.
And what that actually means and what use it has.
Now I
And
feel bad for complimenting you.
Well, I
No,
love
it's
compliments on the next person.
I'm not gonna lie, I
Yeah.
get
Gonna have to
so
take it
many
back.
people are so much nicer to me than they are to people who are aren't seen it. People are gracious and kind and giving to me. My
I love
experience
that's
is
your
that
experience.
and I'm saying I don't think that I'm not gonna lie, guys. I think it's because I'm pretty, because people are so nice to me, and I'm I feel I
It's
see
pretty-
the way they
pretty
treat other
privilege
people. Yeah,
is
and I'm
there.
I
It's a
do.
thing.
And it's that's why it's I know, okay, white people, be honest, because I could admit this. I could admit that I am privileged. I have beautiful privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you guys are privileged too, differently. And now it's getting challenged, which I'm sorry, guys. That sucks.
That's
Should have appreciated it and
That's
admitted
fine.
it.
I'm glad. You don't hard conversations are worth the growth that come out in the end with them. But
yeah, people are generally.
So now I totally get like why it took you so long to warm up to me at the bar.
Why?
Because you're pretty.
Whatever. That's
Yeah,
not,
you were just like, who's this bum?
Kids
she didn't
automatically-
trust you because you were like, oh, you're pretty. It's
Oh, now
like,
I feel bad about
everyone
what
tells me
No.
that.
You're making me feel
I
so bad.
didn't. I don't think I told you were pretty at the bar, but I was just like, I think I was talking to Bonnie and she mentioned you guys want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
And then I was like, dude, I would totally make that happen. And you were like, I'm pretty. I can find anyone to do it. Fuck off.
What? I'm pretty sure that I got your number or your like
You
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, we
but it
connected
took a
that
while.
night.
It took a while. Like 20 minutes later, I got it after that first conversation.
Oh.
I had to wear you down.
oh my God.
No. Like I feel bad about my
No,
second
no,
point
no.
of like little kids love me. They'll like run up to me and I'm like, what if I was a serial killer? Like I'm like serial killers who are attractive. It's like the perfect
Ted Bundy.
predator because
Yeah.
like little kids just naturally trust you if you're like attractive. Like,
Yeah.
have you guys has anyone heard that?
None of us
Like, if
here are
there's,
as
like, a
pretty as
study
you.
of- Whatever.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's Mariah fight him.
I will. Where's the dick?
Yeah,
I'm going to
there's so many
slap
words to
him.
throw at him.
Oh, I love it.
But it's like, I don't know. I think there is like,
There's definitely science to that.
yeah, like how
It's
people
called the
see
pretty
you.
privilege.
But then
yeah.
people also, I feel like, don't expect me ever to like say anything intelligent. Like,
Oh,
so training at
yeah.
work, like, because I serve now, because like all actors have to serve forever until you
Gotta
like,
be the
get-
struggling actress.
Yeah, until you get like a movie deal, you are a server. I was like following the person who was training me, like saying nothing and just like being quiet,
Just
and
absorbing
standing
all
there.
the information.
And the guy was like, "You're doing like," one of the tables were like, "You're doing great," like because I'm not talking like girl. Like I feel like guys just don't expect you as a girl to like really have much to say, and they're like, "You're doing a good job if you're quiet." Like, good job.
Oh, yeah, we have some work to do for
I'm just
sure.
trying to, like, I don't feel like I like talking to girls that are dumb, but I don't expect you to not say anything smart because you're a girl.
Good. You shouldn't.
It's
I
trying to think-
there
I guess
is
it's
I'm
a
just
trying to think of a
working.
time
I
where
feel
I
like
had that
working, like,
prejudice, maybe.
sometimes I'm like, I feel like you're only explaining this thing to me because I'm a girl and you think that like I'm not gonna get it.
so the mansplaining.
Yeah, mansplaining, but
It's a
Yeah.
real thing for sure.
I'm actually guilty of doing that a couple times.
I've called you out. It's okay.
Yeah.
I love you. That's why we have a good
sometimes
relationship.
I'm not gonna lie, there's plenty of things that like my boyfriend mansplains to me that I'm like, thank you, because
Sometimes it's nice to have, right?
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like,
Sometimes I need to be mansplained.
sometimes I need
Yeah.
whole projects mansplained to me.
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Thanks,
thinking, I'm
guys.
trying to think about the last time that
I
'Cause
can
I-
tell that you were thinking about it. So I was
I've
just
recently
waiting
been
for
like guilty of it. I'm trying to think, like I was mansplaining something to a man
Good.
and he was like, bro, I don't need you to tell me how to do that. Shut the fuck up.
Real quick, that candle is beautiful right now. Like,
Isn't it?
it looks so good. It burned so clean through, and now it just looks like a regular candle.
Yeah, now you can't even tell.
I missed when it was burning the tip. That was fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what most of them say.
Stop it.
Just, it was over with so quick.
That's disappointing.
Is there anything else that you
Shucks.
feel like is really important to share with our audience or anyone else that could be listening?
I guess really it's like that I'm not the voice of like all trans people, that nothing I say is like actually reflective of like, if you're curious about something and want to get to know someone, don't like take other information that even society has given you about that person as like fact. Like actually spend the time to get to know someone as an individual, because like I'm not the authority on like all people who have even the same experience as me. Like,
No, you have your own very unique experience.
yeah, like, and I would be wary of not seeing people as like individuals, because you're doing yourself like a great disservice by just like assuming things about people. And if you, yeah, and like, do you guys have any questions? Because I feel like this is definitely the opportunity about being trans or intersex or any of those things.
So are you going to be on hormones for the rest of your life, or once you get to a point? Like
I think
haven't.
Yeah, like, so I will be up until I get surgery, and then I won't have to be on blockers anymore, because
Okay.
like what regulates your testosterone is the testes. So after those are removed, I wouldn't have to be on blockers, but then like estrogen I'd have to have my whole life. But then that same thing goes for like every woman when they get to menopause will have to be on hormones for the rest of her life. Like, you get to a point where like
I had a hysterectomy.
Yeah, where you have to have estrogen. So it's like the harm in that is it like going through your kidneys. So I only was like had that circulating through my kidneys for like the first like 3 months, and then I immediately moved to shots because
it's hard on your
it
kidneys.
bypasses your kidneys.
Yeah.
So
Why was it going through your kidneys? Were you taking?
You take it orally,
Okay,
like when you
oral
take
medication?
like estrogen. Yeah, you would like take it orally, but some
That's
people
why you
the
don't do oral
patches.
steroids, folks.
Yeah,
Men,
because it's so
boys.
bad for your kidneys.
Oh my gosh, it's
Guys do not. This is profiling, but guys do not care about their bodies. It's like some of them, like unless they're obsessed with their bodies. It's like either it's like two sides of that
two men in the
coin.
room are both like,
you guys
we're
are
not worried
like,
about it. Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's why you have
when
us
is the
to help
last
take
time
care
you
of you.
drank water? And they're like, what month is it?
What's water?
That's profiling for
Like,
sure.
there's that
Are you
in
talking
Coke,
about
right?
rain?
Rain?
You can
Exactly.
collect that and
Like
drink
how much
that?
water
Oh.
is in Coke?
When I drink my own tears? What are you saying?
Men don't cry.
Oh my god, yeah, they not enough.
Men don't cry.
I feel.
I'll fucking make you
Oh my
cry.
god, I wish you guys cried more. I think it's so cute when the guy cries.
All you got to do to get me to cry is to put on The Office.
You hate The Office?
No, I cry because I get
the
sad.
end.
Well, I get happy sad or whatever you call it.
Why?
Happy tears?
Like, he leaves at the end?
No, like when Jim gives her the DVD and he's got
Pam.
the note. Yeah, he gives Pam the DVD and he's got the note in his pocket from the
haven't seen the
teapot.
last
I
episode.
fucking bawl my eyes out every
It's the
time.
very last episode.
Just talking about The Office.
It's not the
today,
last
and Erin's
episode.
like, I wish you liked it. She always is like, I wish you liked The Office.
What else made me cry that I text you about?
The movie Hachi does me.
The movie
can't-
what?
Oh, Hachi's so
Hachi?
sad.
Hachi?
I can't watch dog movies because they're always sad.
I've never seen
I
Hachi,
know.
but I'm going to write it down because
They're
I'm going
like-
to good cry.
It's so
Love
sad.
it.
Their lifespans are short.
Brady, do you have any questions for Morgan?
No, I feel like you did a really good job of answering any questions that I would have had.
Thank you.
Because I've kind of moved past the questions of like
The ignorant questions?
ignorant
I
questions.
don't
And it's
wanna-
more about the emotional experience
I
and
don't
everything.
even want to say ignorant questions because ignorance kind of sounds like that's a choice. Some people don't know until you know. So that's we're all about not shaming on this podcast, not judging you for. That's why it's an educational podcast, right? So, I mean, if you didn't know about any of this, thank you for listening. I'm proud of you for getting through this whole episode. Something new and different and maybe scary.
I know. Don't be afraid, guys.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah. And just be respectful when you ask, because everybody that I spoke to, if they didn't want to talk to me about it, they were clear.
Yeah.
And I respected that.
Yeah, it's the same with race.
Yeah.
Someone of a different race of you is not your go-to to ask about racism. Like no. Go do your own research. Go do all that anyway. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for coming
much.
on. That was an awesome interview.
My pleasure. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Well, if anyone wanted to listen to more of our episodes, we're on all major listening platforms. You can find us on social media at Facebook and Twitter and patreon.com/saltysexcast. You can email us at saltysexcast@gmail.com. And I did that in one big girl breath.
That was really awesome.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you. And if you're interested in doing your own show, murdershackstudios@gmail.com.
Studios for rent.
Yeah, kind of.
No. I mean, he'll take sexual flavor sometimes too.
Flavor.
Oh my God. Now you're going to scare
Flavors.
everyone away.
Sexual flavor.
What was that?
Anyway, stay sexy.
And salty.
Bye.
Yeah. And what's puberty?
Oh god.
Well, puberty's a lot of things. Here's the piece.
When you hear about it first, it sounds very strange.
Oh, if it really bothers you, you should see a doctor. Then at puberty, certain glands begin to work, and our bodies begin to change. It enlarges the penis itself.
And there's a center opening between those two, which is called the vagina.
The sex education you wish you had in high school.
Maybe a diagram will help.